And we're going to go live.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, welcome to Geospatial Marketing. What's working, what's not? Today we'll be discussing the results of an industry-wide survey we conducted asking private sector geospatial organizations to offer insights into the marketing activities they find most effective. My name is Kevin Corbley and I'm the president of Corbley Communications. And in just a minute, I'll be joined by my partners in the survey, Linda Duffy of Apropos Research and Dr. Shawana Johnson of Global Marketing Insights. But first, let me quickly set the stage for today's webinar. Earlier this year, Linda, Shawana, and I were engaging in conversations with a number of geospatial professionals as well as several of the geospatial industry trade magazine editors about how marketing has evolved in recent years. And obviously one of the primary drivers of the change has been social media. And despite so many new options for marketing, we found that some private sector organizations were experiencing mixed results with their marketing programs. So we decided to conduct a survey to find out what was working and what wasn't for them. And now a few things that nearly all the respondents had in common were their objectives for what they wanted to achieve with their marketing campaigns. They wanted to raise the profiles of their organizations in an increasingly competitive marketplace. And of course, they wanted to generate sales leads for their sales teams. And overall, they want to increase the sales of products and services. And those are things that are probably universal across most industries. All right, before we get started, just a few housekeeping tips. We want you to know the webinar is being recorded, and we'll send out an email after the webinar with the link in case you'd like to watch it again or send it off to one of your colleagues. Now, all attendees are muted, but you can type questions into us at any time during the webinar. Right at the end, after the formal presentation, we'll take some of those questions, as many as we can, and answer them live here. And you should find your question box in the lower right corner of your screen. And so, again, we'll have that Q&A at the end of the presentation. All right, quick overview. Some of the things that we discovered, these are things we're going to talk about quite a bit, is that social media is just one tool in the marketing toolbox. And the other thing is that trade shows represent a very high percentage of marketing expenditures, and they're most effective for lead generation when they're combined with other activities, press releases, case studies, articles, etc. And then we're also going to talk about market research, that it's more than just a Google search, and we'll identify when you need to get involved in market research and how to make it most cost effective. And just a little bit more background on myself before I bring on Linda and Shawana. Corbley Communications is a marketing, communications, and business development company, and I've been providing these services to geospatial organizations worldwide for 23 years now. One of the specialties we have is creating written content for clients, and they span all sectors of the industry. I do have a bachelor's degree in geology with coursework in remote sensing from the University of Notre Dame. And also, one thing is that years ago, I was the press secretary at EOSat, which was the precursor company to space imaging and, of course, now Digital Globe. And going into the survey, I would have to say I was most eager to learn how organizations were dividing up their marketing dollars among various activities, especially traditional marketing activities versus social media, and we'll talk quite a bit about that. But at this point, let me ask Linda to come on and talk a little bit about Apropos Research.
Thank you, Kevin. I have been employed in the geospatial field since 1995 when I went to work for space imaging doing product marketing. The commercial satellite industry was brand new, so market research was important for identifying the size of potential market segments, what types of products and services were needed, and who were the existing competitors. I started Apropos Research in 2003, and since then have focused on providing market research and other marketing support, such as feature articles, case studies, and press releases, to geospatial companies. For me, participating in this survey was a great opportunity to find out what is important to businesses from a marketing perspective and make sure that we are offering the services that are really needed. Kevin?
Okay, great. Well, and at that, let me ask Shawana Johnson to come on and tell us about Global Marketing Insights.
Thank you, Kevin. Global Marketing Insights provides 3 basic products. The first is an in-depth, highly customized, market domain-specific form of geospatial technology market research using a proprietary database. Our #1 client in this sector over the past 2 years for these products are investment firms in New York, Silicon Valley, the United Kingdom, and Israel. This is very different from our original research clientele when the company was started 18 years ago, which was exclusively the federal civil government and the intelligence community. Our second product is Geospatial Strategic Business and Application Sector Planning, and our largest client for that is the federal civil government. And our third product is Geospatial Sales and Marketing Services to assist tech transfers and small business startups. And the main client base for this is the intelligence community and commercial companies who are typically focused on geospatial cloud offerings and many times engaging their geospatial projects with the Internet of Things. My doctorate degree is from Case Western Reserve University in management with a focus on economics and technology transfer. And I think we're ready to begin the survey results, and at this I'm going to hand it over to Linda.
Thanks, Shawana. The goal of this survey was to identify the marketing strategies currently being used by commercial geospatial companies. By sharing the results with you, we hope to provide useful marketing ideas and stimulate discussion about which tactics are most effective in today's economy. To reach a broad range of geospatial companies, we distributed the survey to a database of over 4,000 contacts and also posted the link on LinkedIn. 142 respondents started the survey. Some were disqualified for being government or academic. However, we are running a different survey for those sectors right now, and I have included that link in the chat box, which you can see on your screen. 67 respondents completed the commercial survey, which gives us a confidence interval of 90% with a plus or minus 10%. Then to categorize the kinds of businesses that responded to the survey, we asked where the majority of their revenue came from. The largest respondent group is made up of application and software developers. The next largest category is other, and looking into that, we found 39% of those were consulting, engineering, and surveying businesses, and 22% of them were GIS project management or applying GIS data. Kevin?
Okay, great. Thanks, Linda. And now in this question, we asked respondents to click all that applied in terms of what marketing activities they're engaged in. So obviously the numbers are not going to add up to 100% here because many clicked on multiple things. But you see trade shows was pretty much the top dog here, 69%. But then we had pretty even distribution. Press releases came in next, social media, 60%, web content creation, printed brochures, still pretty popular. Direct email with newsletter and e-newsletters at 50%, and then you see white papers, and then it starts to trail off videos and webinars, online advertising, feature article placements, hard copy advertising, and then other. So I would say overall it's interesting. We did have really good distribution. I was pleased to see that we had so much social media, especially as well as press releases. So I don't think there's really any surprise there. The only thing maybe disappointed me a little bit was that feature article placements were so low there on the totem pole at 29%. I've always told people after 25 years in the geospatial industry, the best way to sell geospatial products and services is with feature article placements, client success stories, testimonials. They work really well, published in industry trade magazines. So that was my only surprise on there. Let's see, Linda, how about you? What surprises did you see?
I was also surprised by the feature article ranking because I see them as a marketing vehicle that can be customized to differentiate a company from its competitors and really emphasize its expertise in particular areas. Also, feature articles provide a wider distribution to a targeted audience at a lower cost, and they result in more customer touches throughout the year than a single trade show would. Shawana, would you like to add anything?
I would. As Kevin had stated earlier, we started our careers in the 90s in commercializing satellite imagery globally in over 180 countries. And now the main companies of that era in the United States, we're still left with one, which is Digital Globe. But those efforts spawned hundreds of other geospatial imagery-based and service-based companies globally. And it still appears that more traditional methods of marketing and companies are experimenting with social media. But I would like to ask the listeners, and they could respond in the question area on the bottom right of their screen. I'd like to know if perhaps the reason why feature articles and things of that nature ranked low, perhaps they consider white papers and case study creations to be more important. And many times we're seeing with the more cloud offered geospatial products and services that they really consider those either scientific tools or marketing tools. And I'd like to know what our audience considers them, because whether you consider your case studies, your white papers, or your feature articles marketing or scientific, that would lead to a very different way to put them out to the rest of the industry in terms of marketing exposure tools.
Right, and that's a good point. Actually, what dawned on me last night as I was looking through the slides again is that some of those things like white papers and articles, a lot of that is considered web content creation now by some companies. So, maybe if we had asked the question a little differently, we would have seen some different responses there. But yeah, very interesting. But I am glad to see that people are doing a lot of web content creation, because that really is the foundation for everything. Just one last thing before we move off this slide. Hard copy advertising, there's still a lot of benefit there, and I think people are not focused as much on it now because it's harder to track. But let me assure you, from years of doing this, there's still a lot of benefit to advertising in the trade publications that we have that are still in print. And obviously a lot of people are doing online advertising, a lot of benefit there too. But all right, well, let's move on to the next one. This one is about, we asked specifically for the respondents to tell us about when they are trying to establish or improve their brand name recognition, what marketing activities are the most effective for their organization, and we asked them to rank the top 3. So let's talk about what brand recognition is first of all. I always tell people that you want to get your name out there. You want people, when they do hear your name or see your logo, you want them to know who you are, what you do, and who you serve. In other words, what audiences. Those are the 3 main things, because those are really the first step in the sales cycle, right? Somebody needs to know who you are in most cases before they're going to buy anything from you. So again, I don't think there are a lot of surprises here. Trade shows, number 1 overall, as well as got the lion's share of the first ranking. Web content creation got the most, second most number 1 rankings, followed by social media, but they're all up there in the top 3. And I have no argument with any of those. Press releases was 4th, and I always tell people press releases, in terms of brand recognition and positioning your company, that's the most cost-effective vehicle for establishing your brand. And then we've got all the other items there that go down to online advertising, hard copy advertising. But not a lot of surprises there for me. But yeah, and so Shawana, how about you? What were you thinking about there? Oh, are you muted, Shawana?
Yes, sorry. I believe that at the top of the list for marketing activities, there are so many diverse trade shows that I think the next time we do this, I'm going to ask the question, do you feel like you achieved brand recognition? Because now there are so many trade shows. Trade shows are so diverse. I wonder if people feel like they achieve brand recognition, or do they even think that brand recognition is important? And again, at the end, we're going to ask you, we'll provide you with our emails. And people don't want to respond in the question box or the chat box, and certainly understand that. You can send us your questions to our private emails. I want to thank the person that already responded to the question we had about why feature articles were low in placement, and a lot of that is just a lack of internal resources to produce the pieces, and it's also very difficult to find writers who can comprehensively understand the industry and the solution, and a lot of times you just can't get it placed without buying expensive advertising space. I think that there's a lot of encouragement coming for the industry that publications are changing the way they're doing business, and they're not going to be focused on those expensive ads in order to get those feature articles. But I'm going to talk a little bit later about the other types of programs that I would say some of the newest startups in geospatial technologies utilize, as opposed to what I would call the more traditional online publications or even printed publications. Kevin?
Okay, that sounds great. And why don't you go ahead, Shawana, and take the next slide, talking about sales lead generation.
Okay. So for the sales lead generation, the point here is that the process has to be managed for any of these activities to be truly effective. Calls to action have to be included in the activities, and the sales leads build our own personal contact databases. Many companies that said they do social media, although here the two by far the largest responses were from personal referrals and trade shows in order to generate sales leads. That's telling, because I think it's also one of the most traditional and easiest way to get sales leads. And many people ask us about social media. They don't quite know how to manage it, and they don't understand how to bring it in and actually turn it in to a qualified sales lead. And Kevin, I know you deal with that a lot, and I was hoping you would say a little bit about that on this slide.
Exactly. It's really an Achilles heel, I think, processing sales leads, especially after a trade show. And so what I encourage clients to do, and it's what I do personally when I go to a trade show, is I think you have to prioritize the leads right then and there. And the hottest leads, you want to get back in touch with them no less or no more than a week after the trade show is over. And then you can kind of follow up on your other leads after that, no longer than 3 weeks overall. And I think the hottest leads, you've got to follow up with a phone call. I just don't think an email is enough. And I know a lot of companies, when they do booths at trade shows, if they have a really good sales lead person comes in their booth, they'll try to steer them off to a private meeting area or someplace quiet in the hall to talk right then and there. So you really can't let those leads go cold.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right. And Shawana, why don't you go ahead and continue on talking about the primary marketing activities?
Okay, so the next slide refers to, the results referred to, if you only had to choose one primary marketing activity for the year, what would it be? And the number one choice was trade shows, and I can see from some of our attendees, a couple of you are going to be really glad to hear that. So, and I won't call you out by name, but you know who you are. And I think that trade shows as number one in the geospatial world is not a surprise. However, if we look at this from an Internet of Things perspective, I believe the results could be somewhat flipped, and that social media, white papers, press releases would in turn become a little bit higher on the list, and or trade shows might be referred to as trade NARs, or those online trade shows that you can attend. I've gone to several of them. I found sometimes they were very useful and well organized, and other times in our industry not. So I think while that audience and those providers mature, we have to, in the traditional sense, kind of combine our trade shows with more social media oriented means. And I think several providers in the more traditional side of geospatial technology have done that and are doing that. I'd like to know from the audience if the Internet of Things impacts their plans in the future. And while you put in those responses or ask questions, I'd like to ask for some input from Linda Duffy of Apropos Research, of anything else of particular interest to her in this.
Thanks, Shawana. I just wanted to point out the other category here. It is only 3%, but when I looked into what the write-in answers were, they mentioned scientific association meetings and technical seminars, which are also in-person, face-to-face methods of marketing, whether you are a presenter or just a participant at the seminar. These comments, combined with the high ranking of trade shows, indicates a continued interest in the geospatial community to personalize their marketing efforts by developing relationships. Kevin, would you like to add anything else?
Yeah, I really was interested that social media came in third when you're thinking about primary marketing activity, because I really consider social media as a support type activity to some of the other marketing things. Mm-hmm. But, as we said at the outset, marketing is evolving. And this is interesting, because if we could dive into this and ask what social media people are engaged in, and we didn't do that in this case, but if we did, it'll be interesting to find out. But I think that Twitter, especially in the business-to-business arena, is fading a little bit. It might be fading overall. I'm not sure if we'll be talking about Twitter too much a year from now. But LinkedIn is definitely very strong right now in geospatial, as well as in the business-to-business communications and marketing sector in general. That's compared to Facebook, which is definitely more the business-to-consumer realm. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Linda's going to introduce the next slide here, and I'll talk more about social media. Go ahead, Linda.
Great, thanks. Our next question had to do with how often a business touches their potential clients throughout the year, and the results were pretty interesting. Even though many respondents cited social media as a primary marketing activity, 57% say they touch potential clients only 0 to 4 times throughout the year. Of this subgroup, 58% said time and resources are the reason for little or no contact. Also among these respondents touching only 0 to 4 times, trade shows and personal referrals were ranked highest as their method to obtain sales leads. But if they had to pick one method, social media was #1, closely followed by trade shows. In reality, if they are reaching out less than 5 times a year, social media is not being used correctly and is not going to be very effective as a primary marketing tool. The results also show that 1/3 of this group has a marketing budget in the $0 to $50,000 range, while 2/3 of those touching customers more than 10 times per year have budgets over $150,000. Kevin, would you like to add something there?
Sure, yeah, several things. So it's really interesting. This is where social media, I think, really does shine if used properly, because you literally can reach out and touch thousands of potential customers at once with tweets and with LinkedIn postings. So I think this is where it's really important to engage in that. But in terms of other activities, this does surprise me. I think these numbers are low. When I'm recommending, say, an entry-level PR program for a small company, a startup company hasn't been in business. I still recommend that per year they should be doing 4 to 6 press releases, should be putting at least 2 to 4 case studies on their website, and maybe a couple of feature articles, again, every year. And a program like that costs less than, say, a trade show booth at just one big trade show. So that's important to keep in mind. And then when you take all those things, the press releases, the case studies, the articles, and you use them as your content to blast out on Twitter, on LinkedIn, maybe even on Facebook, again, the cost per touch per person really dramatically goes down to pennies. So it's really cost effective. It's cost effective and effective to combine all these things. And you can very quickly be reaching tens of thousands of people for pennies. And Shawana, I know you've got more to say about this as well.
So I think you have to include the cost per touches, especially if you're a person that has to get approval from your executive management, because they will understand you can greatly drive down the cost per touch. Just because you get 400 leads from a trade show, a lot of the trade shows now have social media built right into the program, and the more of that you engage in, you might actually touch 1,000 attendees as opposed to see 380 at your booth. That cost per touch spreads your marketing costs out, and your managers and your boards of directors will understand that, and I think it will give you a better opportunity to tell your story about how you want to market in terms of inside your own organization, and may help you get a little bit better budgeting capacity for these things. I also want to answer a question that came in. It says, could you offer a working definition of the geospatial industry? Products and services typically offered, big and small players. I happen to be involved in the use of mapping analytics for marketing purposes, and I think it's more than simply imaging. And we totally agree with that attendee's question and his statement. So we include imaging companies, that's satellite, aerial, anything above the surface of the earth. That would also include geospatial technologies in terms of software, and also technologies in terms of analytics, algorithms that are used to manage geospatial imagery, and also the platforms. Platform development is very different for geospatial offerings than it is for your traditional more structured basis. So we have greatly expanded over the years the definition of the geospatial industry. And I also see that a couple people responded with they definitely consider the Internet of Things when they are developing their social media plans and their marketing plans, but that it's still only going to a lot of these things, trade shows, etc., when you have confirmed appointments. And I want to say to the person that said that for everyone else, that is absolutely the thing you want to do. Get as many appointments confirmed, but still use this touch for potential clients, because it helps show in the bigger picture the exposure your company has. Kevin?
Great. Yeah, and just one last point about social media and trade shows. I couldn't agree with you more, Shawana. Especially Twitter. Twitter works great at a trade show to use the show's hashtag and drive people to your booth, tell them what you're showing. Maybe you're unveiling a new product or something. I've had some very, very successful campaigns using Twitter. So didn't mean to diss Twitter too much earlier, because it is effective certainly in many places, and that's one of them right there. So let's move on to the next slide. Shawana, why don't you take this one as well?
Okay. So of the respondents with budgets less of the respondents in the sales generation, we've already seen that personal referrals were really important in some of the other responses they had as sales leads. However, the cost per contact, I hate to keep harping on that, but the cost per contact for personal referrals is the most expensive way to generate your first sales leads. However, For those of us that have been in the industry for 20 years or more, we really have to help reduce that cost of the personal referrals and bring newcomers into the industry or the technical folks entering the industry under our wing to get them exposed to those individuals and or organizations that we get the personal referrals from. And since that is still a very traditional way, even in today's electronic world, we're relying on personal contacts. So one of the things we try to do is get our clients to get as many of their newcomers in their own organizations, folks with under 5, 3, or 2 years experience, really get them exposed to the industry itself, because we have not cracked that eggshell of effective contact data management, which would reduce our costs of delivering our products and our services through the cloud, through product delivery of big data analytics. And that's still an area that as an industry we struggle with. And as we go on to the next slide, Kevin, the respondents that had budgets of less than 50K down at the bottom, we looked into this a little more deeply, and 50% of that budget for these smaller companies with smaller budgets were spent on trade shows, with the remaining, almost the entire remaining amount, almost 30%, on their website development. However, for those that had budgets of more than $300,000, their average allocations were 38% for trade shows and 20% for articles and white papers, etc. So the interesting point of all of it is that we are still very traditionally based in the geospatial industry, despite the we had a broad range of respondents spread across many new geospatial technology offerings. So I'm going to ask you to move on to Linda, and I think this is your next slide.
Great, thanks, Shawana. The majority of respondents consider purchasing off-the-shelf reports as adequate for their needs for market research. However, those reports typically are written at a high level and may not provide the granularity required for a targeted marketing campaign that is focused on a geographic area or a specific product or service. Custom market research helps identify the size of the potential market and the needs of the customers. Prior to spending money developing a product or service, wouldn't it be helpful to know that there is demand? The build it and they will buy approach is pretty risky. Understanding the competition and the customer's needs are key. And I think this shift away from custom research that we see reflected in this has been happening over the last few years, and it's kind of one of the things that I was surprised to see in the results. So Shawana, would you like to add something else?
Yeah, yes, I would. Thank you, Linda. Our number one client base for market research has drastically shifted in the past 2 years. We spend most of our efforts, and a third of our products are market research based. Those go almost 100% to venture capitalists who are considering geospatial technologies as an investment. And they want much more in-depth research and interpretation of the industry before they make investments. Although, depending upon the type of geospatial technology they're going to invest in, I will tell you their questions about market research have switched to, can you tell us, we know this company has X amount of followers, and we've determined their products and services are this X amount of price per pixel. What we'd like to know is the market domains that contain those followers and contain the users of the price per pixel product. So the question for me is, when we get that type of that's a very different type of market research than your typical, let's go to these 7 market domains and tell me about the financial industry, the insurance industry. And I was wondering, of our users that are online and our attendees, are online searches enough for you and Google searches enough for you and for your management? Because the government, it seems like the government has also leaned a little bit away from in-depth market research, unless they're doing broad area announcements to get a wide sweep of technology under their belt. And I'd like to know, just from the attendees, what do you see happening in your own organization? And Kevin, I think you're next up.
Okay, great. And we're going to talk about online targeted marketing here, but before I get into that, just a quick reminder, if you do have comments on some of these questions we're asking, or if you have questions of your own, we are going to answer those live at the end, so you can go ahead, type those into your question box at any time, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. So online targeted marketing, this is really exciting to me because it is really brand new. And a lot of my clients are experimenting with it and already having some good success. So we asked, hey, have you tried targeted marketing online? And still, just by a slight, we had the biggest group say they've never tried it, and that was 42%. But look at 40% have already tried Google AdWords. So, and I hear that's pretty effective from what I'm getting from my clients, although it can get pricey. And a lot are trying targeted LinkedIn ads and messaging, as well as Facebook. And you see that LinkedIn is, well, not quite twice as many as Facebook. But that, again, that makes sense, because LinkedIn definitely geared more towards the B2B, the business-to-business marketing activities, compared to Facebook, which is more business to consumer. The cookie tracking apps, I'm fascinated with those, fascinated and irritated. We've probably all had that experience, where you look at shoes or something, some product online, and the next thing you know, an ad for that product is chasing you on every website that you go to for days and weeks after that. So, but we are having some geospatial companies give that a try, and so that's pretty interesting. Glad to see that's going on. And in a second, we're going to talk about the satisfaction with that. But Shwana, do you have any comments on this slide?
I do. I think that it's really interesting that some of the newcomers to the geospatial technology industry, and new is, 3 to 5 years old, not, I would say, your traditional imagery providers or more traditional mapping companies. A lot of them are utilizing online marketing, but they don't use what I would say are typical geospatial online campaigns. A lot of our newest clients use online publications called The Verge. However, I say that they use more social media oriented publication tools, and their client base, the ones that keep them in business, are still extremely traditionally oriented, more in terms of agriculture, water resources, energy, mapping uses, and predictive intelligence. They are traditional client base, but they are using online marketing in a very different way to just gain a following, while they still do more traditional sales approaches, I guess, is my point.
Right, and to elaborate on that, certainly the different types of online activities, this is true of all kinds of social media as well, the demographics can be very different. people on Facebook versus LinkedIn and some of the other types of social media like Snapchat. So that's another thing you got to take into account, especially when you're thinking about age groups. So great. Well, let's move on to this next one. This is satisfaction with online targeted marketing. So you see, people are still a little, I think, ambivalent. About 58% there said they're neutral, so I guess some had good experiences, some bad. But only 6% said they were dissatisfied. Now, that's really good. A quarter of them satisfied with what they're experiencing, and I have a feeling that satisfied and the very satisfied together, 36%, that number is going to grow. This whole technology is in its infancy, and it's going to grow. It's important, and it's working. So we'll keep an eye on that. And Linda, I think you've got a little bit more detail on some of these responses, right?
Yes, Kevin. I looked into the which platform they had tried for the people who were neutral, and so out of those 58% who had a neutral level of satisfaction, 79% of those had tried Google, 32% had tried LinkedIn, and 16% had tried Facebook. And now some of these respondents have tried more than one of the services also. We could tell that because of the number of total responses. And then also I looked into who specifically tried LinkedIn, and out of the ones who had tried LinkedIn, 56% of them were very satisfied or satisfied, compared to 44% of the Facebook users being very satisfied or satisfied, and only 30% of the Google users. These results support Kevin's impression that LinkedIn can get better results for businesses than some of the other online targeted marketing services. Shawana, do you have anything else to add?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, great. Well, each of us came to different conclusions on the survey overall. And so I would say my major conclusion I came to is that social media, while it's being used a lot, I think it might not be used properly in a lot of situations. And I have a number of recommendations I make that we put into effect for my clients. First of all, you have to create a strategic plan that encompasses many types of outbound marketing activities, right? The press releases, the articles, the case studies we talked about. You can try to get those published, obviously. You can put them on your own website. And that's really key, getting that content on your website. That's the core for everything these days, is your own website. So I say that your social media is going to be the way you deliver that information, the links to your published press releases, your white paper, your case studies, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you need to have about 75% of your outgoing tweets and your LinkedIn posts, et cetera, linking back to your own website, to that content you've got there, whether it's content you get published elsewhere or not. But you want to be driving traffic to your own website. So, you know, what do you do with the other 25% or so? I really encourage my clients to put links in for the news of their business partners and link to that. Business partners really appreciate that, and they'll know in a lot of cases they can track social media and see that people are coming to their website as a result of your social media, which is great. It's you know, it's what business partners should do with each other. So let's see, Shawana, you want to go ahead and take the next one?
Yes. So again, when you're evaluating the effectiveness of your lead generation activities, you know, include all the costs that it takes you to reach people, and then really give a good overall understanding for your company of how many people you are reaching, because it will help you tell a much stronger story to your management. I would also urge you, as you use social media, to still designate a spokesman in your organization to do be the front person for you. Although, if you recall, I said there are a lot of new publications, online publications out there where you can have a voice and be heard. The money seems to still be flowing into the new technologies from a traditional client base. And they will listen and look at what it is people are saying and doing. And you want to monitor or get the most value out of everything you're saying about your products and services that you possibly can. One of our respondents made a really good point here that when they were looking at market research, a lot of it is just done by generalists. And I would say, and that they don't really have the technical expertise, or they don't have a proprietary user database so they can actually go out and speak to your potential clients to really dig into their needs. So I really appreciate that comment that you really need to get to your user and understand their needs. And that's typically why people end up working with us, because we agree totally, you just can't get real intelligence unless you're speaking to the direct users. And a lot of times with these new offerings, that's and a new company that doesn't have a well-honed or sophisticated contact management database, that's a difficult thing for them to do. But really, to get more support from your own management teams, try to show how much your lead generation can be reduced by cost per contact by including everybody out there that you touch. Linda?
Thanks, Shauna. I just want to reiterate how a shotgun approach for marketing can easily miss the target. By doing some upfront market research, you can better assess the sales potential for your products and services and better understand your competition. This knowledge helps make your marketing dollars go further by reaching a relevant audience. And Kevin, I think we're going to go to Q&A.
That's great. Okay, appreciate that. I was you caught me already looking ahead into the questions there. And actually, there was a really good comment that came in. I want to just reiterate this because this is a point I should have made, and that's that using social media is a no-brainer, as this person said, because it's so inexpensive, relatively speaking, to use social media to get out that web content that probably costs you a lot to make. And so, again, it's so cost-effective to engage in social media as a delivery tool for so much information. And so, so that's a really, really good point. Let's see. I'm going to go through here, and let's see. And Shawana, either Shawana or Linda, either of you can comment on this. Somebody said that they like Google and Wikipedia as their primary sources of marketing data. What do you all think of that?
I think it's one of the, this is Shawana, I think it's a great place to look, and I think the geospatial industry has learned to keep it as up to date as it possibly can be. So it's sometimes got some errors in it from a factual perspective, but overall, I think you have to use the tool that best suits what it is you're trying to learn. And many times management and chairmen of the board, they have very general questions, but as they dig into specific users and want sales numbers generated, sometimes it becomes very difficult to get the kind of detailed information in terms of a potential target market and then to extrapolate that to a potential sales figure. But I see nothing wrong with using it, and if it answers the mail for the people in your organization, I recommend it, because I think a lot of the canned studies that are out there, and those have lost, they continue to lose market share. Even those that were kind of in new geospatial areas such as cloud, Internet of Things, and platform analytics, they don't get the market following they used to, which was usually from the larger imagery-based organizations. And people are really focusing on how can I get this technology, geospatial technology my company has, out to its specific users. So Linda, what are your thoughts on Google and Wikipedia?
I certainly think it's a good place to start, but for very custom information going to talk with real people, whether it's on the phone or in person, and really delving into what their needs are. I think everybody comes up with surprising information that way that you hadn't considered before. And really, and most companies don't have the time to have someone in-house do that, to make 50 phone calls and write down everything that was said and group things together and come to some conclusions. So there is still benefit, I think, in actually talking to people instead of just Googling on subjects.
I would also caution everyone out there, and it depends on where you are in terms of your company. Are you trying to get funding? Are you already venture capital based in terms of your funding? We, Linda and I both participate in a lot of venture capital studies and company auctions, so that when a company is trying to be bought or sold, whether it is publicly held or privately held, the venture capital companies and the finance institutions, whether they're equity holding firms, they come to us and they ask us to actually review some of the research they've been given by these companies. And they know when it has been a publicly available tool that people have used for their prospectus, and they want people that have more subject matter expertise and very detailed user experience. So if it's a product that provides water resource management, they want to hear from all the water resource users what type of product will work. And they will go pay for that themselves before they engage in funding or financing an organization like that.
Okay, great. And I want to touch back on one of the comments, Shawana, that you were, I think, reading earlier. We got talking about white papers, you know, are they really scientific, are they marketing? I would say the way I look at white papers is that they're definitely more technical than, say, a case study article that you would put online or publish in a trade magazine. And they're going to have certainly a marketing and sales quality to them, but exactly, they're going to be more technical, maybe have some engineering and scientific bent to them. But I think it's important to remember that we need to market to the techie folks as well as the business folks. So that's the way I always look at white papers. It's a way to get some subtle marketing in with those engineers, the scientists who make a lot of decisions at a lot of the geospatial companies. Anybody have anything to add on that?
There is so much information flowing at people all the time. Anything you can use to differentiate your company and your technical expertise is a worthwhile market tool.
Great. Okay. Linda, how about you?
No, I'm nothing to add on that.
Okay. Yeah, and just to reiterate, that's at the end of the day, that's what we're all trying to do with all these activities, is differentiate ourselves from everybody else out there. That's what marketing is about. That's what we're trying to do with our geospatial clients, is figure out what their unique selling proposition is, and then relay that message through a variety of different marketing activities. Here's an interesting question, and again, Shawana and Linda both take a shot at this. What are the hot topics you're being asked to research these days in geospatial?
Number one hot topic is platform analytics and delivery of a real-time solution based on imagery and pretty sophisticated algorithms.
Great. Okay. Linda, how about you?
I would say over the last couple years, most interest, and a lot of this is with writing that I've done for articles, LiDAR and all of the new devices for LiDAR and the improvements in that area, as well as with UAS and everything, all the different markets looking into UAS usage. and also BIM. BIM has been, and that's related to LiDAR, but that has been another area that I've done research in.
Especially in Europe, BIM is a much bigger draw there and very an engaged marketplace.
Yeah, and I would just to echo that, Shawana, BIM in the United States is still like a separate, I mean, it's part of geospatial,
Yes.
but it's separate. But
Yes.
in Europe, boy, it is just integrated with
Yes.
the rest of geospatial. So we're seeing that I think they're ahead of us there in Europe. I really can't speak to Asia as much, but certainly I saw that at Intergeo in Hamburg last month. So that's definitely going on. Let's see, we're starting to run short on time here. We just had a quick question about where we're going to post the presentation. We'll send an email out after the webinar is over within the next couple days with a link to the recorded webinar. We'll also have the link that's currently in your chat window to the other survey we're doing about government outreach. They don't call it marketing, they call it outreach in the government sector, but it also relates to geospatial. And let's see if there's just one last quick question we can have here. You know, other trends, this is kind of similar to the one we just had, but Shawana, what are trends you're seeing in the geospatial market right now?
Major trends, again, are focusing on providing a very immediate solution to get to a predictive outcome. So historical data and imagery are needed, and in addition, people want to say, how can you tell me more about, not more data, tell me more about the impact and the future impact of this imagery and of this data. So you can get billions and billions of inputs for weather, let's say, but until you relate that to a specific predicted impact, that's where the trends for funding and the trending for technology transfer is leaning more in the predictive outcome. And imagery is the tool to do that, and if they think they can do it with LiDAR, radar, unmanned aerial vehicles of any kind, they will use that data. With that said, I think some of the typical difficulties we have and the science of our industry still has to come into play. You have to have good ground truth data. You have to have good vetted, validated data, and have an authoritative chain of command. But clearly, the focus for our client base is predictive in nature.
Great. Linda, how about you?
I would say that the most interesting trend that I'm observing is how geospatial technology is attracting the attention of new users that are not scientific users necessarily. They're consumers, whether it's self-driving cars or UAS, but also archaeology uses of geospatial, and I think that's really capturing people's attention, the preservation of historic sites and things like that. I've written a few articles about that in the last couple.
Okay, and for me, I'm just going to say UAVs, the unmanned aerial vehicles, that's just so big right now, certainly in the imaging side of the industry, and I think we're going to see that grow. And that's about it. We're out of time, and we appreciate everybody who attended today and all of you who sent in questions and comments. Really appreciate that. So we will be sending out a follow-up email within the next few days with the link for the recording and that other survey we talked about. So, and if you do need to get in touch with any of us, we have our email addresses on screen, and also our web addresses are basically just put the www in front of those domains, and you can get to any of us that way. So thank you again, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a future webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks.